This is TWiT.
Big deal. No PlayStation at all. And it wasn't just Sony either. Electronic Arts left the show floor a couple years ago. Activision was not on the show floor this year. Microsoft used to have a limited presence on the show floor, but most of its operations are now across the street at LA Live. So yeah, it was a big deal. I think there's a lot of concern about the future of E3 right now. The former ESA president, Michael Gallagher, he just stepped down. And according to my inside sources, the industry in general was not happy with the direction he was taking it. And if the ESA is the lobbying faction in Washington for the games industry, and they just hired a brand new president. And one of his goals is to try to get people back on board for E3. Although next year you're going to have the launch of, or probably the launch of the PlayStation 5, launch of Xbox Scarlet. So chances are good that I think by the time this new ESA president starts working with the publishers and the publishers start to realize, hey, we need to launch these platforms next year, I have a feeling they'll probably be back for E3 2020.
It did feel empty, though. It really, was striking.
Huh.
Tuesday was really bad. Usually the way E3 goes is Tuesday is the busiest day, and then it slowly tapers off by Thursday. This year, Tuesday was the worst day, and then Wednesday was okay. Thursday was strong in the morning, but by the afternoon, it was like a ghost town. So attendance was down about 2,000 people this year, which isn't a huge slide, but you're starting to see the trend now where it's starting to go down, so something has to be done.
And Shane, I'm sure you remember many years barely being able to walk through the aisles and being bombarded on all sides by cacophony and
that was before they let the public in. Keep in mind, that was when it was still just industry. And now they're letting the public into the show, and it's smaller than it used to be.
There's two main halls, used to be three, now there's two. And even those, I feel like they could have gotten by with one. There's easily 30 to 40 feet up of perimeter now that's just not used, and it was easy to walk through the walkways, and there was a lot less to see in each hall. It really felt markedly different to me this year.
The ESA is incentivized to fix it because it generates over 80% of its annual revenue from E3 alone. And that's part of the rub, is that the ESA relies on that money to operate all year long. And so it ends up gouging the publishers for floor space. Like I've heard that, you know, just for the floor space for a medium-sized booth there, it's like $5 million for the 3 days. But the problem is it's hard for the ESA to lower that entrance fee because that's where all its money comes from. So it's kind of a catch-22, but the bottom line is the ESA is going to have to work with the industry. Like it or not, this is the biggest game show of the year worldwide as far as importance and where people tune in to see things. It also has the farthest reach as far as more commercial outlets because stuff happens in gaming every day of the year. But it's only E3 where you get the USA Todays and the Yahoos and everything reporting on it. So something has to be done to save it. And I just hope that the publishers are willing to work with the ESA to try to find a better alternative going forward.
I mean, I think the publishers are finding that they don't need a show, that they can disintermediate their message. They can do things like what Nintendo has been doing with Nintendo Direct. Now Sony is doing the same thing where they're just, instead of standing on a stage in front of a bunch of media, they just package things together, put it out on YouTube or on any other streaming site at any time they want, rather than conforming to a schedule of when a show is. I think you make a good point about the mainstream media taking note during these time periods, but there certainly doesn't need to be a show floor or the millions of dollars these companies spend to do that. We've already seen companies like Apple and Samsung, you know, not have to rely on things like CES to get their message out. I think that's the trend, and where all of these things are going is the companies go, we don't need the media, and we don't need a show to package everybody together. In fact, we'd prefer to have the spotlight solely on us and make our own event that we can make perfect and not have to do it live in front of an audience anyway.
Yeah.
I think if you look at it, though, Sony announced the initial specs for PlayStation 5 about a month before E3. Got no mainstream coverage whatsoever. Xbox announces the first specs for Scarlet on its stage at E3. It's on the front page of CNN. So there's a lot of weight behind that. And you talk about particular games. There are some games that don't need mainstream exposure because even if they get it, it's not going to really make a difference. But if you think about taking a game that sells 6 million copies into the realm of selling 12 million, you do need that more casual audience to be informed about the game. So it's it's not a perfect science, but I think it'll be better for the industry overall if it unites and they all come back to E3 and we create that spectacle again that you and I are both familiar with.
Some conferences are surviving. I mean, that's what happened to Comdex, the old PC conference. Nobody needed to go to that anymore, but CES thrives. Was Computex pretty busy, Sherilyn? Were there a lot of companies and people there?
Computex was certainly more interesting than years past, actually. So I'm surprised that this is kind of going against the trend that you guys have rightly pointed out. I mean, just look at last year. What happened was in October, every company did their own thing. And so people who were in the consumer tech industry, like myself and some of my peers, we were just stressed to death in October because we had Google, we had Apple, we had Samsung. Everyone just announced thing after thing after thing. Then we had the review season. Then we had the it's just a bit much. I mean, yes, the companies will have the luxury of doing everything on their own schedule and they stay away from shows. But for us as a lean team, or if you're someone that's trying to do all of this on your own, it will drive you to your near grave.